Hello there, this is Rob Chadwick from ADL, and this is the fifth in a series of video tutorials on how to use the Virtual World Framework Sandbox application. In the previous ones, we looked at how to create and duplicate objects. We've got a whole bunch of spheres left over from there. I thought that maybe I'd keep them around to do something useful, but let's get rid of them. I'm going to click and drag with the left mouse button to region select and hit delete on the keyboard. Click and drag, delete, and I'm just going to kind of clear all of this stuff up. Very good, so now I'm back to kind of an empty world. Today I want to talk a little bit about grouping and organizing objects. I'm going to look at linking objects together and creating groups of objects. First of all, let's create a couple of spheres. In the simplest way to kind of create a hierarchy is just to link one object to another. In this case, both of these objects are children of the scene object, and the scene contains kind of everything in the world. If I make one object a child of another, it will inherit the transformations. What does that mean? Well, it's easier just to show you. I'm going to hit the link tool up here. You'll notice that my cursor changes to a crosshair, and I'll click on another object. You may have noticed just a little flash. Nothing appeared to happen. I can still move this object around kind of normally. However, you'll notice when I click on this object, the bounding box is bigger. It's expanded to encompass the other object. That's because this object is now a child of this one. Sorry, this object, this sphere, is a child of this selected sphere. You'll notice the move tool doesn't float in the middle of these two objects. This isn't the same thing as a multi-selection. I've only got one object selected. It just happens to have sub-objects. You'll see if I move this object, the other one moves, and if I rotate it, the other one rotates. That object inherits the transformations of its parent. Let's go ahead and build another object. Watch this. I'll create a box. And if I put this box, let's put it right on top of this one. I can link it to this guy. All right, so the second sphere is going to have a new child. I'm going to hit link and click the second sphere. Now, when I hit the first sphere, the bounding box includes all of its children, and it moves just like you would expect. When I hit this one, you'll see its bounding box includes its child. And that'll move just like that. And then if I move the child on its own, it'll rotate just like you would expect. So all of the transform hierarchy is working just like you would think. Right? I can turn these objects. You'll note that local space rotations work just like you would expect. Everything works pretty much the way you think it should. World space is a little bit tricky, but it works as well. There's a nifty tool right next to the link button, which is select parent. So if I'm on the box and I select his parent, now I've selected the sphere. If I select his parent, now I've selected the first sphere. So I can walk up and down the hierarchy using that tool. I'll show you in another lesson some more complex tools you can use to navigate the hierarchy. Finally, let's look at what happens when we unlink an object. I'm going to grab this guy. If I unlink him from his parent, he will still keep his child relationship with the box, but he'll no longer be attached to this one. So let me select him and hit the unlink button. You don't need to choose a parent because we know what the parent is. It just unlinks this object from whatever the parent is. He keeps his child, all right? And if I go to the child box and select parent, I'll get him. But if I select parent again, I didn't get this sphere. I got the whole world selected. Right on that clipboard represents the whole world. Likewise, I select this guy, and he's back to where he was before. He doesn't have that huge bounding box because he doesn't include these objects. So this is how you can create a hierarchy of objects, and if one was so inclined, you could build pretty complex shapes this way. You can also use the link set to build kind of a group. You could attach a whole bunch of different objects to the sphere so that you could duplicate it. And I should mention something important. When I duplicate a parent, I also duplicate his children. So let me attach this back. So now the first sphere has this whole structure. If I Shift D to duplicate that parent sphere, I duplicate the entire hierarchy, which means I also have all of the other objects as well. Similarly, this one's very important. If I delete a parent, all of the children get deleted as well. So if I delete this, remember this is a child. This object is a child. Let's see, this object is a child of this one. If I delete this object, I'll delete his child, the child box. And now this guy is all by himself. He doesn't have any children anymore. I'll delete that. So that's important to remember. You may want to use that functionality to create groups of objects and reusable pieces, or you can group objects to make reusable pieces. In this case, if I do a multi-selection and I go to hierarchy, grouping, group, all of these objects will become linked to a new invisible object. So these objects are now all the children of this little icon that appeared. One of the nifty things about a group is that you can't select the objects that are within the group without doing something special. The group works just like the hierarchies did. If I select it, I can duplicate it. And if I delete the group, I delete all of them. Shift D, duplicate that whole group, and pull it across. I can even link one group to another. You can create a hierarchy that's got groups as parts of the hierarchy. That can get very complex very quickly. But anybody who's familiar with working in a 3D graphics package will probably be used to that kind of thing. Finally, let's say I do want to manipulate something inside of this group. And this can be a little bit tricky. You'll notice that the outline of the group is dark yellow. That's green, dark green. Whenever I click on any part of the group, I just get the whole group. I can't select within it. If I go to Hierarchy, Grouping, Open Group, you'll notice that the bounding box turned to a really pale green. You can barely see it. I almost said yellow again. Now I can select the objects that are within the group individually, or if I click on the group's icon, I'll get the whole group again. Now because this group is open, the selection tool allows me to click within it. Because the group is really a form of a hierarchy, if I hit the up button while I have a child of the group selected because the group is open, I'll step up to selecting the icon that represents the group, and from there I can hierarchy, grouping, close. Now the group is closed and I can no longer select the individual pieces within it. Finally, when I have a group selected, not when I have a child of a group selected, when the group is closed and I've got the whole group selected, I can go to hierarchy, grouping, ungroup, open group, there we go, ungroup, and this will break all the pieces apart, the icon disappears, and now these objects are totally independent of each other again. It's just like removing all the children from that invisible object and deleting the invisible object. So that's it. You can use those tools to build structures that are complex. If I stack a whole bunch of boxes together into a column, or into a, I don't know, maybe I make a little robot by stacking up boxes, and I want to duplicate the whole robot around the world, I'd select them all and group them, and then I could just select and Shift D and have as many copies of that as I like. That's just another way you can kind of manage the complexity that comes from having many, many, many objects in a scene. In the next tutorial, we'll talk a little bit about other ways to navigate the hierarchy. Sometimes you'll need a visual tool to do it because it can get complex.